The revolving doors of Sapphire Corporation swished behind Jungkook as he stepped into the gleaming lobby, his palms slick with sweat. The polished floors reflected his nervous expression back at him, reminding him of how small he felt compared to the towering glass walls around him. He had gotten the job, his dream, and his lifeline, but stepping into Taehyung's office for the first time made him wish he could turn back. A soft click announced the arrival of the man himself. Taehyung. Every rumor Jungkook had heard about the CEO, the cold demeanor, the ruthless reputation, the smiles that never came, flooded his mind. The man was even taller in person, his posture impeccable, his black suit sharp enough to cut glass. Taehyung's eyes, dark and calculating, scanned the lobby before landing on Jungkook. "You're late." The voice was calm, almost casual, but it struck like a whip. Jungkook froze. "I'm sorry, sir. It won't happen again," he stammered, bowing slightly. Taehyung's lips twitched into the faintest smirk, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I hope not. I expect perfection, especially from my personal secretary." The words made Jungkook's heart skip. Perfection? From him? How could he possibly meet such impossible standards? Taehyung gestured toward the office, where a sleek desk towered over a row of neat chairs. "Sit. Listen. Learn. And don't make mistakes. You'll thank me if you survive your first week." "Yes, sir," Jungkook whispered, clutching his folder tighter. The first hours were a blur of instructions, schedules, and a list of meetings that seemed endless. Every time Jungkook's hands trembled, every time he hesitated, Taehyung's gaze bore into him like a silent challenge. Yet, amidst the tension, there were tiny moments, Taehyung handing him a cup of coffee with an imperceptible nod, lingering slightly longer than necessary when correcting a document, or muttering an almost private critique that made Jungkook question himself. Was it just professionalism? Or something more? By the end of the day, Jungkook's body ached, his mind whirring with anxiety, yet a strange, forbidden curiosity lingered. He hated that he couldn't stop thinking about the cold, infuriating CEO who made his heart beat faster with just a look. Taehyung, watching him leave, allowed himself the faintest smile, one that no employee had ever seen before. A smile reserved only for this persistent, stubborn young man who refused to break under his scrutiny. And for the first time in years, Taehyung felt a spark he hadn't thought he could ever feel again. The office was quiet after hours, the usual hum of phones and chatter gone, leaving only the soft click of Jungkook's shoes against the marble floor. He had stayed late, partly because Taehyung's relentless instructions had taken longer than expected, and partly because he didn't dare leave the office until the CEO himself had gone. Or so he thought. "Jungkook," the voice made him freeze. Taehyung was leaning against his desk, the dim desk lamp casting a sharp silhouette over his angular face. His expression was unreadable, as always, but the corners of his mouth were softer than Jungkook had ever seen. "I should go," Jungkook stammered, starting to turn, but Taehyung's hand on the desk stopped him. "Sit," Taehyung said quietly. "You're working too hard," Jungkook blinked. I just wanted to finish the schedule for tomorrow, sir." Taehyung's gaze softened just slightly, and for the first time, Jungkook noticed the faint tension in the man's shoulders, the subtle strain behind the perfectly composed exterior. "You always do your best," Taehyung muttered, almost to himself. "Most people give up after a week. But you're different." Jungkook's heart thudded in his chest. "Different?" Did that mean something more? Before he could respond, a file slipped from his hands. Papers scattered across the floor. Flustered, he bent to pick them up, and as he did, his hand brushed against Taehyung's. The touch was electric. Neither moved, and for a moment, time seemed to stop. Jungkook's face flushed, and he quickly straightened, averting his gaze. I'm sorry, he whispered. Taehyung's lips worked into the faintest smile. Careful, he said softly. You might make me lose my patience, or worse, my composure. Jungkook's mind went blank. Why does he sound so gentle? It was almost criminal, the way this man, so cold by day, could be so captivating in quiet moments like this. As Jungkook finally gathered the last of the papers, he caught a glimpse of Taehyung watching him, expression unreadable yet heavy with something unspoken. And as he left the office that night, Jungkook realized he hated this man, but also, somehow, couldn't stop thinking about him. For Taehyung, the first cracks in his carefully built armor were forming, and he wasn't entirely sure he wanted to repair them. The next morning, Jungkook arrived at the office with a renewed sense of determination. After last night, he was determined to survive Taehyung's scrutiny without flustered blunders, or at least try. He barely had time to grab his first cup of coffee before a sharp voice stopped him. Where have you been? Jungkook froze. Taehyung was leaning against the doorway of his office, arms crossed, eyes narrowed like he had just caught a criminal. I came in on time, sir, Jungkook said nervously. Just picking up some coffee. Taehyung's lips quirked, the faintest smirk tugging at the corner. Coffee, his tone carried an edge of amusement that Jungkook couldn't read. Is that your excuse for yesterday's delay? I was finishing the schedule, Jungkook protested, cheeks burning. You take longer than I expected, Taehyung said, stepping closer, the office suddenly feeling smaller, hotter. And yet you don't complain, you don't ask for help, you just struggle through it. Jungkook swallowed hard. The closer Taehyung got, the more he noticed the subtle details, the faint scent of cologne, the warmth of his presence, the way his piercing gaze softened for no one else. You're impossible, Jungkook muttered under his breath, but loud enough for Taehyung to hear. Taehyung's smirk widened, dangerously playful. Oh, am I? He leaned in, just enough for Jungkook to feel his breath brush against his ear. And yet, you can't stop looking at me, Jungkook's heart skipped. He stumbled backward, grabbing the coffee cup as if it could shield him. Taehyung straightened, his smirk lingering, eyes gleaming with something unreadable. Careful, secretary. One more slip, and I might make your job very difficult. Jungkook's face turned crimson. Yes, sir, he muttered, fumbling toward the desk, trying to regain composure. But even as he worked, he couldn't shake the feeling of Taehyung's gaze following him, studying him, teasing him, testing him. For the first time, he realized that this wasn't just a job. It was a battlefield. And in that battlefield, Jungkook couldn't tell if he was winning or losing his heart. It was late evening, and the office was nearly empty. The usual hustle had faded, leaving only the low hum of the air conditioner and the distant city lights reflecting off the glass walls. Jungkook was still working, filing reports, double-checking schedules, his fingers trembling slightly from exhaustion. He should have left hours ago, but something inside him wouldn't let him. You're still here. Taehyung's voice broke the silence. He appeared from the shadows of his office, leaning casually against the door frame. "I wanted to finish these reports, sir," Jungkook replied, trying to sound composed. Taehyung stepped closer, his dark eyes softer than usual, almost human. "You don't have to overwork yourself," he said, surprising Jungkook. "I could handle it," Jungkook blinked. I want to do a good job." Taehyung's gaze lingered, studying him in a way no employee had ever dared to look at him. "You remind me of someone," he murmured, almost to himself. "Someone persistent, stubborn, and frustratingly earnest." Jungkook's heart skipped. "I don't understand, sir." "You'll see," Taehyung said, a faint shadow of a smile tugging at his lips. "One day, you'll understand." Then, unexpectedly, he turned and walked away, leaving Jungkook stunned, not just by the words, but by the vulnerability in his tone. Jungkook sat back in his chair, rubbing his temples. For the first time, he saw a glimpse of the man behind the cold exterior, a man who didn't need anyone, yet noticed him, and somehow, that was more terrifying than Taehyung's anger ever could be. As Jungkook gathered his things to leave, he found himself stealing one last glance at the CEO's office. Taehyung was already back to his work, expression unreadable, yet Jungkook could swear he saw the corner of his mouth twitch, a hint of the smile no one ever saw. And just like that, Jungkook realized, he hated this man, yes, but he couldn't stop thinking about him.